thus far, a reasonably orderly life. There have been some catastrophes and messes, but it's amazing how we have got this far. I mean, the thing looks after itself. And you well remember that a lot of times that when you thought you were in charge and doing something sensible, you did something extremely foolish. And when you thought you did something foolish, it turned out to be a blessing. That's the way things go. Now, of course, there's a dangerous way of speaking to people who are in the process of learning the taboos and the conventions. Because we take their minds off the happening. To do that, well, it isn't necessary to do it that way. It isn't really necessary to turn a child into a moron in the process of becoming an adult, but that's what we do. Because we teach a child to be a child. And that prevents them from growing up. It's a method of keeping them off.
So a motherfucker that's playing in pictures.
Baby talk, but straight language.
Who you fooling, girl?
Your child will become.
You had to get with me.
I swear to God,
motherfucker.
And will be able to tell you a lot of funny things you don't know. But then the trouble is you have to send the poor thing to school. And where if it is that advanced, it will be regarded as a freak and have a very bad time of it. So it will have to conceal itself as a moron. Sometimes children are brought up without that interruption of being a child. With all the cutie pie stuff. It's not boring about Christmas. It's a way of commercializing childhood. So there's our basic point of departure. And now we'll have an intermission in which we will have coffee. A lecture on Zen is always something in the nature of a hoax. Because it really does deal with a domain of experience that can't be talked about. But one must remember at the same time that there's really nothing at all that can be talked about adequately. And the whole art of poetry is to say what can't be said. So every poet, every artist, feels when he gets to the end of his work that there's something absolutely essential that was left out. So Zen has always described itself as a finger pointing at the moon. And you must be very careful not to mistake the finger for the moon. And especially careful if the finger looks religious. Not to suck it for comfort, instead of following where it points. In the Sanskrit saying that we were discussing in the first of these seminars, Tat Tvamasi, that art thou, Zen is concerned with that. That, of course, is the word which is used for Brahma, the absolute reality, in Hindu philosophy. And you're it, only in disguise, and disguised so well that you've forgotten it. But unfortunately, ideas like the ultimate ground of being, the self, Brahman, ultimate reality, the great void, all that is very, very abstract talk. And Zen is concerned with a much more direct way of coming to an understanding of that, or thatness, as it's called, tathata, in Sanskrit. So Zen has been summed up in 4 statements. A direct transmission outside scriptures and apart from tradition. No dependence on words and letters. direct pointing to the human mind and seeing into one's own nature and becoming Buddha. That is, becoming enlightened, awakened from the normal hypnosis under which almost all of us go round like somnambules. It's extraordinary how much interest has existed in Zen in the United States, especially in the years since the war with Japan. And naturally, I've often meditated on the reasons for this interest. I think, first of all, the appeal of Zen lies in its unusual quality of humor. Religions aren't, as a rule, humorous in any way. Religions are serious. And when one looks at Zen art and reads Zen stories, it is quite apparent that something is going on here which isn't serious in the ordinary sense, however sincere it may be. The next thing I think that has appealed to Westerners is that Zen has no doctrines. There is nothing you have to believe, and it doesn't moralize at you very much. It's not particularly concerned with morals at all. It's a field of inquiry rather like physics, and you don't expect a physicist to discuss authoritatively about morals, even though as a human being he has moral interests and problems. But as a physicist, he is not a moral authority. Or if you go to an oculist or ophthalmologist to have your eyes adjusted, that is so you can see clearly. And Zen is spiritual ophthalmology. Another thing that appeals very much to Western students about Zen is that they've read their Zen from Suzuki, and from some of my writings, and from R.H. Blythe. And these people present a rather different kind of Zen from that which you will find today in Japan. They present what is essentially early Chinese Zen, from the old writings, ranging from about shortly before 700 AD to 1000 AD. And that Zen has a very different flavor from modern Japanese Zen. And so, of course, many of the people who go to study Zen in Japan disapprove of Dr. Suzuki thoroughly, and also, naturally, of my exposition of Zen, because we don't make a great fetish of studying Zen by sitting. In Japan today, they sit and they sit and they sit. R.H. Blythe asked a Zen master, "What would you do if you had only 1/2 hour left to live?" And he said, "I would do Zazen," which means he would sit like the Buddha here and practice meditation. And Blythe had given him several choices. Would you like to listen to your favorite music? Would you have a dinner? Would you get drunk? Would you like the company of a beautiful woman? Would you take a walk? What would you do? Or would you just go on with your daily business as if nothing was going to happen? In other words, would you wind up your watch? So he was very disappointed at this answer. And he said, sitting is only one way of doing Zen. Buddhism speaks of the 4 dignities of man: walking, standing, sitting, and lying. And so Zazen is simply the Japanese word for sitting Zen. There must also be walking Zen, standing Zen, and lying Zen. You should know, for example, how to sleep in a Zen way. That means to sleep thoroughly. Zen has been described as when hungry eat, when tired sleep. And when the student got that description, he said, "Well, doesn't everybody do that?" And the master said they don't. When hungry, they don't just eat, but think of 10,000 things. When tired, they don't just sleep, but dream innumerable dreams. So in a sense, This sounds like the old Western truism. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. But that's not the same thing as Zen. A lot of people like to see if they could sum up Zen in that way. In the Latin motto of the school I used to go to in England, age dum agis, act when you act, or while you act. There's a famous story which beautifully illustrates the current relationships between East and West. Paul Reps, who wrote, or rather drew, a lovely book called Zen Telegrams, once asked a Zen master to sum up Buddhism in one phrase. And he said, don't act, but act. So Reps was simply delighted, because he thought the master had said, don't act, but act. And that, of course, would be the Taoist principle of Wu Wei, of action in the spirit of not being separate from the world, realizing so fully that you are the universe too, that your action on it is not an interference, but an expression of the totality. But the master's English was very bad indeed, and Paul Reps had misunderstood him. He had said, don't act, bad act. And you know, that is the sort of attitude that all clergy develop over the centuries. You know how it is. So often the sermon boils down to, I hear people who ought to be good. What good is it? No, the fascination of Zen is that it promises a sudden insight into something that is always supposed to take years and years. Psychoanalysts, if you're mixed up, they tell you the troubles you've got yourself into all these years can't be undone in a day. Therefore, it will take many, many sessions, maybe twice a week, several years, for you to get straightened out. Christians say that if you embark on a path of spiritualism, you get yourself a spiritual direction, and submit yourself to the will of God, but you may not get into the high states of prayer. The Hindus, the Vedic society, also say require many long years of meditation, very hard concentration, very difficult practice, and stern discipline. Then maybe you will make enough progress in this life to become a monk in your next life. Then you'll make enough progress to make some of these preliminary stages leading to Buddhism, but it's all likely to take you many, many years. When this artist Hasegawa was asked how does one receive Zen, he said, it may take you 3 seconds, it may take you 30 years. And so you see there is always the possibility that it may take only 3 seconds. Zen literature abounds in stories, you see, in which there's a dialogue of what is called in Japanese mondo, question and answer, between a Zen teacher and his student. And these dialogues are fascinatingly incomprehensible. But it always seems to be that the end of this swift interchange, the student gets the point. Sometimes he doesn't. I gave a book of these dialogues once to a friend of mine. All that is very interested in Eastern philosophy. And he said, I haven't understood a word, but it's cheered me up enormously. So this book called the Mumonkan, which means the barrier has been summed up no gate in 4 statements. or the Gateless Gate. Contains such stories as outside students. I say students rather than monk, because Zen students are not monks in our sense. No dependence on words and methods. Our monks take life by modesty, chastity, and obedience. And to make the grade, you're expected to spend your whole life in nature. But I call the Zen monk a student because he's more like a student in a theological seminary. He may stay much longer than the usual 3 years. He may stay 30 years or so. But it's always possible for him to leave with dignity and to graduate and to go into lay life.
Can you get on a line?
Very few graduates teacher. That is the man in charge of the spiritual development of the students. So one of these students in the book says to the master Joshu, I have been here in this monastery for some time and I've had no instruction from you. The master said, have you had breakfast? Yes. Then go wash your bowl. And the monk was awakened. Now you may think that the moral of this story is do the work that's nearest, though it's dull at whiles, helping when you meet them, lame dogs over stiles. Or that the bowl might be a symbol of the great void, these all-containing universe. And probably the monk had washed it because they immediately after eating in Japan and China, in a monastery, they would take tea and pour it into the bowl and swirl it around, wash it and wipe it out.
Oh, my kitty cat is here! Yeah.
In that case, you might think that the master was saying, don't gild the lily. Don't, to use a real nice Zen phrase, don't put legs on a snake.
Don't put legs on the snake, kitty cat.
No. The point of that story.
Look at all the people following you. Ha!
But that's what's difficult about it.
Well, nobody follows me.
And all these stories resemble jokes in this sense.
I'm listening to somebody else's clubhouse room right now, by the way. We're doing a Zen lecture meditation.
Do you really think these people follow?
They didn't come here because of me.
They're gross. Like, I don't know these people.
Gross?
If you don't follow, if you don't follow Megatron and you just follow me, leave.
Damn. Well, PRMGW, you don't have anything to say. You wanted to come up.
What do you have to say? And Shakuri down there. What?
Good everyone.
Hello.
Yes, good evening to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And what about that Shakuri down there? What's up with you, guy? You just follow me around or something? That's not
All
cool.
get through, but not the tail. How is it that the tail can't get
You
through?
either follow Megatron
Nobody could answer this.
or you don't. Like, don't bother.
Another story tells of a certain master called Baijan, who was so good that he had hundreds of students, and they couldn't all be housed in one monastery. So he had to find one of the students who could also be a master. And so he arranged a test. He put down a pitcher in front of them all and said, without making an assertion or without making a denial, tell me, what is this? And the senior monk said it couldn't be called a piece of wood. And the teacher didn't accept this answer. But the monastery cook came forward and kicked the pitcher over and walked away. And he got the job. And the commentator remarks, maybe he wasn't so smart after all, for he gave up an easy job for a difficult one. When an inquirer about Zen came to a master, they often, they approach a Zen master with a kind of key question. What is the fundamental principle of Buddhism? Or why did the bearded barbarian come from the West? Because Zen is supposed to have been brought into China by a Hindu named Bodhidharma. Bodhidharma is always represented as having a huge bushy beard and very fierce eyes. Now, Bodhidharma always insisted that he had nothing to teach. And so, why did he come?
I'm saying I was doing all that pimp shit.
That's one of the fundamental questions. I'd say to me, I've often said when I'm giving a lecture, I'm not trying to improve you. I'm not trying to persuade you to a certain point of view. That is to say, like a preacher would convert somebody. In fact,
Kitty, are you
I
there?
have nothing to tell you at all.
Kitty, are you there?
An avid worshiper of Jupiter. In fact, he erected temples to Jupiter, and he proclaimed to be
Usual suspects. What do you mean?
Every time.
Hey, what's up,
Every
John?
time
Hey.
that I've walked one little asshole, then all
I'll
these
great
trolls show
essay
up.
if you want to hear
In
it.
your rooms, Megatron.
You gonna read it?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, read it.
So it's called the American Diner Gothic. In
How-
the 2020s.
Wait, how long is this gonna be?
Like 15 minutes.
Okay, go ahead.
So it's the American Diner Gothic. In the 2020s, the weird soul of placeless America is being born on Discord servers. You're not hallucinating the great weirding of America. The visual evidence is everywhere. Start with what you can see. You're in a small town in Wisconsin, the heart of normal America. The transgender assistant manager at CVS has septum piercing, a wolf cut, and a name tag that reads Finn. A block away, a 4chaner construction worker in the Sam Hyde shooter shirt listens to Blade and plots his impending virality. At Target, the anime section has metastasized from one shelf to an entire aisle. These aren't random weirdos, and they aren't teenagers in a phase. Walk through any office park, and you'll find the same aesthetic bleeding through the cubicles. Anime stickers on laptops, Discord running on second monitors. They're the new American type, young but transgenerational, as distinctive as the Organization Man or the Valley Girl once were. I call them diner goths. What you get when economic mobility dies, suburbs become psychic deserts, and Discord becomes more real than your cul-de-sac. The term came to me when I was trying to identify what had, over the past decade, silently washed over the 95% of America that lived outside of the superstar cities. Placelessness without cosmopolitanism and with complacent downward mobility. A post-subcultural alt aesthetic with a post-nerd fandom orientation that's become a new mainstream. Weirdness, but casual and prolified. Diner goth. Diner for provincialism. Goth as a lazy shorthand for alternative aesthetics. These tendencies are correlated. Something is making them happen together in the places previously considered to be the most normal. A new quirk of the 2020s America is that geek equals goth equals left behind American. Diner gothdom exists as both a concentrated archetype and a mass cultural wave. The diner goth core is the pierced up, gender fluid Amazon warehouse worker who streams on Twitch, writes fan fiction, wears a furry tail to raves, runs an OnlyFans, and dreams of voice acting while working nights at the fulfillment center. But like microplastics, diner goth traits, anime consumption, subcultural diffusion, digital-first socialization have spread into everything. You don't need to be deep in it to show signs. It's in the memes, the slang, the TikToks. Culture that once lived on 4chan and Tumblr now shows up in the bros group chat. Even when the full archetype isn't present, the vocabulary is. People who aren't diner goths still live inside the same convergence. The online normie can no longer help but get the geek's reference. They understand the furry jokes, the anime reaction images, the gender tone. Formerly underground subcultural tributaries have emptied into the same water, and now the only difference between people is how deep they swim. Why is this happening? The diner goth is made possible by two things: American stagnation and the breakdown of barriers. Economics tells the story. Roughly half of 18 to 29-year-olds now live with their parents, numbers not seen since the Great Depression. But what has recently changed is that nobody is ashamed. This isn't a temporary, but embarrassing wait for recovery. It's the new normal. Gen Z home ownership sits well below that of prior generations. At age 27, only 33% of Zoomers own homes compared to 38% of Gen Xers and 41% of Boomers when they were the same age. Each generation slides further from the American dream, and they've stopped pretending to climb. 64% of Gen Z say they prioritize peace of mind over wealth accumulation. Of course they do. When a one-bedroom costs 70% of your income, when your student debt payments are higher than your parents' mortgage, when every job is temporarily permanent, what exactly are you supposed to accumulate? The economic race is over, and normal Americans lost. The diner goth looks at this and makes the only rational choice: stop trying to win. Meanwhile, the places they're stuck in are becoming indistinguishable. Regional culture is disappearing among American youth. Linguistic research provides the clearest evidence. The stark decline of the Texas accent among young people and of the northern cities' vowel shift around the Great Lakes. Everywhere you look, younger generations are dropping regional speech for the general American pronunciation. This trend of cultural flattening is particularly noteworthy because people are moving around less. In 2023, only 7.8% of Americans changed residence, the lowest rate ever recorded since the census began tracking mobility in 1948. Interstate moves, once a powerful homogenizing force, dwindled to just 1.4% of the population, about half of it was 20 years ago. What we're seeing isn't the result of mass relocation, but something stranger: a cultural convergence happening in place. Provincial people are becoming more provincial while the provinces are losing their soul, and a new culture has flooded in from the internet. No single data point better illustrates the cultural movement of youth than this. 42% of Gen Z watches anime weekly compared to 25% of millennials, but only 25% of Gen Z follows NFL football compared to 44% of millennials. Anime has transformed from niche subculture to mainstream entertainment. The numbers are staggering. The fastest growing anime market in the world is North America, with an expected 16% annual growth rate by 2030. Crunchyroll, an anime streaming service, has an estimated 53 million North American viewers, while manga sales exploded up to 500% at some Barnes & Noble's locations in 2020. Major retailers like Walmart and Target now dedicate significant shelf space to anime merchandise, with the global anime merchandise market projected to reach $20 billion by 2032. Hot Topic, the emo apparel store in nearly every American mall, tells the story of geek and alt fashion cultures collapsing into one. 3/4 of its products are licensed pop culture merchandise, including not just anime, but everything else for fandom and gamer types. We are in the early stages of a Cambrian explosion of novelty, and the most comfortable amidst it are the neurodivergents. 30% of adults under 30 identify as neurodivergent, while just 6% of those over 65 do. This is a mix between diagnostic improvement and a generation using medical language to describe their relationship to a fundamentally different world. When reality is 34 browser tabs, 3 Discord conversations, and a Twitch stream running in the background, ADHD is an adaptation. The geographic distribution of queerness defies every elite assumption. In 2022 study, rural Appalachian youth in a deep red Trump country reported transgender or non-binary identity at 7.2%, 4 times the 2017 national baseline of 1.8%. This inverts the adult pattern where cities are queerer than rural areas. No coastal elite indoctrination here. It's what happens when traditional life paths close up everywhere and the internet becomes the only space with options. The story tying together all the threads of this great weirding is the economic precarity creates alternative success metrics, which is why you don't easily find diner goth tendencies among the strivers in San Francisco and New York City. The new economic subject for the rest of America, online possibility, playing the internet lottery and trying to build a following for your stream. You can meet anyone online. You can join any community. You can create anything from anywhere and get cozy glory from it. The diner goth condition is not just the proliferation of anime or queerness or all aesthetics, but the creative empowerment of the masses. This is the story of the collapse of the middle class consensus. The story goes like this. The great stagnation desacralizes local America through the homogeneous efficiency machine of national private equity, and everything flattens. Gen Z is disinherited by boomer policy that culminates but never crests, rationing the good life and generational warfare. Regional accents and identities and cultures are vanishing. Liquid internet flows into this void as a mass vision event. The mythic power of fandom and content overflowing from and washing over millions of minds in placeless America. The new soul of a soulless world. Subcultures and nerd cultures disappear into simply culture, a self-oblivious and technicolor and sincere in a way that postmodernism could never permit. Instead, a riot of myth and meaning in the fandom noosphere that bootstraps itself from and then forgets the North American provinces. Aside from the provinces is the Hello Kitty ketamine raver, the dispensary cashier, the corn t-shirt, and the TikTok cosplayer dancing in the parking lot. The VTuber with a day job in suburban office park. The Delta Room hyperfixator, the Tumblr alumnus, the state college theater envy, the alt-pro girl autism. Mall goth aesthetics become landmark defaults. Subcultures converge into the downwardly mobile mass aesthetic. Anime becomes cool, not by assimilating to taste, but by overwhelming it. Queerness leaves the sophistication cradle of the urban bohemian elves and conquers the tacky masses of the hinterland middle and lower classes. The great severance comes in the form of hobbit parents shrugging at the total queering of their sons and daughters. This is the story of the new pan-Pennsylvanian, pan-Floridian, Pacific Northwest provincial hacker. It's the story of the omni-racial anime white trash of the Texas Triangle, the ambiguously emo Arkansas, and the Nintendo Hispanic and the Black Wheel, the internet dreamer forced to awaken in the wasteland of reality. It's the emerging ensoulment of Western Massachusetts, not Boston, Buffalo, not Brooklyn, the Inland Empire, not LA. Queerness by default is no longer for the grad student, but for the townie gamer in the hentai hoodie. It's pretty good.
Pretty good. I did something kind of interesting yesterday. I read the Tao Te Ching with my best friend. Even though,
I listened to the replay. Like you said something and then she said something else. It was a good listen.
it was what was really interesting about it is I got a lot of like understanding as well from doing it because I was reading it very slowly and even one word at a time. So that was really interesting experience. I'd like to try to do that again. I want to get other girls to do it because I don't want to sit there and read with a guy because that would be, you know, goy. I mean, G-A-Y. Isn't it interesting how goy and gay are just so similar, so close? Even the O itself is close to an A, a little A. Oh, Miss B is here. B, have you been listening to Bima? That is a poor girl who needs to read.
What happened with Bima?
Nothing. She's just on about the Jews and how they stole the Palestinians' land.
It's interesting to hear about, you know, it used to be always right-wing anti-Semitism. Now it's like left-wing anti-Semitism that's happening.
Mm-hmm. You hear it from all sides. You know what's funny is Pepe loves to claim he's far right, but actually he's far left. He's not actually. So it's so easy for someone to present as far right, but be far left and not even know it, or know it and just not care to talk about it. Because technically Pepe is extremely liberal. So we have like this admixture of far right components and far left components, which give us a far right, far left, or a far left, far right.
You know, all this low IQ anti-Semitism is making me become a Judeophile.
Yeah, some people become what is it, like English files, or what is it? What is the term?
Do you think Fatima, she's
Anglophile, I think, isn't it?
yeah, Anglophiles?
Anyways, what about Fatima?
Do you think she's lesbian?
I don't think so. Could be. It's, women are just bisexual in general. Like 80% of women are just bisexuals.
When are you building your great harem of women? The 72 women that are going to follow you.
I thought that that's what I wanted, but it turns out that that's just too loud. There's no peace. So I'm just starting Zen monastery instead. Right now I'm listening to Alan Watts, the full library.
I have a room open right now.
That's you.
It works.
That's you. I knew it was you. I was just laughing because I'm like, you came in here, you wanted to read. I'm like, what the fuck? How does he want to read? He's playing Alan Watts right now.
It's a good essay about sort of describing how the internet is completely taking over, most of America. Like it's being distilled and flowing through all its channels.
Well, what's funny is successful people don't use it publicly. They use it privately. They never ever, they're always on private. They're never public because they don't publish anything which is like social. They just post their private experiences, which doesn't really do anything for anybody other than their, vanity. Reading on the internet is very, very useful and valuable for people. I bought a bunch of Alan Watts books, but when you read Alan Watts versus listening to him lecture, it's just not the same. It's not the same dopamine, but
yeah, it's the cadence of his voice. He really knows how to be a wordsmith.
Yeah, he does. He talked about R.H. Blythe. Have you ever read R.H. Blythe?
I've heard about him, but I've never read anything about him.
Yeah, go on Amazon or eBay or your book search websites, type in R.H. Blythe, read that guy, and you'll be like, wow, whoa. He's a real Wordsworth. He talks about Wordsworth a lot.
Right. He does haikus.
Yeah, he does haikus, does haiku analysis. But it's really just like the first English Zen exploration and author. Apparently he died young. He was like a prisoner of war, but he lived in Japan, I guess, pre-exposure and pre World War II victory. So anyways, his books are just like out of this world. I have many of his books, and every time I read it, I'm floored.
Did you see that YouTuber that I sent to you who reads for like 11 hours straight?
The Goblin?
Like that's his. Yeah. It's crazy. He's like, it's amazing just to see. Like he's reading for 11 hours straight from like 6 in the morning until like 10 or 11 in the evening.
That's too much. I found like 2 hours a day is about as much as the human physical body can do like 2 hours every 12 hours. That's what I've found. After that, your tongue, things start like falling apart.
It's like 600 people coming into his live streams almost every day.
If he actually looked like a normal person, people would just quickly swipe away. But since he's so hideous and the super stimulus,
it's so funny. Like he needs a shower, dude. That cracked me up, man.
he's hideous.
Hey, what's up, Abby? We were just talking about this other guy who kind of does what John does. He reads for like 11 hours straight. I'll post the link for his YouTube channel so you can check him out.
Abby, why don't you come up here? I want to try to read something quickly. You don't have to read it. You just repeat back to me what I say. I did it with Fatima yesterday. You think about that. Oh, she's outie. People keep talking about Abby's PTR. Like, have you seen Abby? Have you seen Abby? Let me send you the photo of Abby. I was like, please stop sending me a nightmare. I can't think about Abby's face before I go to sleep every night. It's like waking up in a Chernobyl nightmare. Some mutant freak that had her skin burned off by radiation, and a goblin emerged like one of those horrible creatures. It's a gremlin. She's a gremlin. Look at her PTR. She's so close to Pepe. You know, Pepe. It's so funny. I've been listening to so much Pepe. I actually had like a moment of terror the other. Was like echoing through my head, and I was like, "Oh no, get out of my head!"
He has like a baby voice, the way that he talks. That's what I've noticed about him. He just speaks like in a very much like a baby voice kind of tone, his cadence, and maybe that's like a way like to hypnotize people, to listen to what he has to say.
See, I think people are trying to figure out like, is what I'm listening to intelligent? Is this person just a character? Because I think a lot of people view him as just this like persona, which is like kind of common, you know. He is. If he actually changed his PTR to that frog, it would be more accurate than his like spiky hair podcast ultra tan photo. Like, I must be a loser if I dislike a loser, you know, because like his words. See, the thing about him is he's so vulgar, and other people are so vulgar. It like worries me that
his stories about his time in Catholic school and like it's something else.
No, that's not the vulgar I'm talking about. I'm just talking about like the rampant racism and bigotry and hate speech and hate words that he drops so casually. But you know, do you know his dad is or was a federal judge, supposedly? Read something. This is Lao Tzu, the Tao Te Ching, the Book of Meaning. This is part 1. Tao. The Tao that can be expressed is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. Non-existence, I call the beginning of heaven and earth. Existence, I call the mother of individual beings. Does the direction towards non-existence lead sight of the miraculous essence? The direction towards existence to the sight of spatial limitation, different only in name. In its unity, The secret's still deeper secret is the gateway through which all miracles emerge. Easy for someone to present as far right, but be far left and not even know it, or know it and just not care to talk about it. I don't know if you're on TikTok, but I've been like putting up an insane amount of TikTok videos. They're just 10-minute. Stream is pointless because you can just record yourself for 10-minute intervals endlessly. What's the point of actually like live streaming unless you're interacting with them? That's the only. Just trying to get across that Clubhouse is actually like an audiobook, and it's, unless you're interacting, it's just an audiobook, and you would be, in my opinion, retarded if you were to listen to Clubhouse as like your preferred audiobook. That would be retarded.